Hey y'all, so today it is finally that time again. It is time to rank my favorite books of 2016. This is always one of my favorite videos to film every year, and I hate that I have to wait so long to get home to my books to do it, but I'm glad that I'm finally here and I can finally film my favorite books of 2016. I went back and forth on how many books I wanted to include on this list, and I ended up going with 12. I was going to do 10, but the last two that would have been left off were just ones that I wanted to include, and so I decided to go with 12. And in past ranking videos, I've separated out books and series and given them their own slots, but this year I decided to do that differently, and so some slots will be a full series if I read it in 2016. And just as a reference, I read, I think, 64 books in 2016, and a few of those were rereads, so I had about 60 books to choose from for this list, so obviously I had to cut a lot of them. Starting out at number 12 on my list is Don't Look Back by Jennifer L. Armentrout, which I gave 9 stars out of 10, which is 4 out of 5 on Goodreads. In this book, our main character wakes up on the side of the road with literally no memory of anything that has happened before that point in her life. When she returns home, she realizes that she and her best friend went missing and that her best friend still hasn't returned. And this book is her journey trying to figure out what happened to her and her best friend and to try to regain any memories that she has. The one thing about this book is that it is such an addicting read. It's one of those books that you pick up and you just can't put it down. I picked this up really late at night, which was a bad idea, and I read it until like 5 in the morning, and I woke up and did all the stuff I had to do the next day, thinking about the book all day, and picked it up and finished it when I had the chance. It was so good. I read it in less than 24 hours, and it was just such an engrossing and addicting read. I read another Jennifer L. Armentrout book this year, right at the end of the year, and that was Obsidian from her Luck series, and that book also just barely missed out on being on this list because it was such an addicting read, and I'm definitely going to be continuing the series in 2017. Next up in slot number 11 is The Reckoner's Trilogy by Brandon Sanderson, mostly number 1 Steelheart and number 2 Firefight, both of which I gave 9 out of 10 or 4 out of 5. In this world, there are people called epics who have superpowers, but they're actually evil instead of being good, and these people are called epics. Our main character, David, teams up with these people who are the Reckoners, who are basically the only people trying to fight back against these epics. I talk about how much I love Brandon Sanderson so much, and while this is probably my least favorite series that I've read of his, it's still really good, really engrossing. I think I gave Calamity 8.5 out of 10, which is 4 out of 5, so all of them have gotten pretty high star ratings from me, and I love Brandon Sanderson's books. This is his only young adult series, and I still really enjoyed it. This is not the last you're going to be seeing of Brandon Sanderson on this list. Next up in slot number 10 is Coda by Emma Trevane, which I gave 9 stars out of 10 or 4 out of 5 on Goodreads. This is a dystopian young adult novel about a world where the only legal music is sanctioned through the government, and it is highly addictive. But our main character, Anthem, loves real music and is in a band, which is extremely illegal. And I absolutely loved this book. I am a sucker for dystopian novels and for novels that are about music, and this has both of those. I thought that this world was really interesting, and even though I found it to be a little bit predictable, I loved it enough that I really didn't care about that predictability aspect. Overall, I just completely fell in love with this book and with these characters, and I know that there's a sequel, but it's kind of a spin-off sequel, so I haven't yet decided if I want to pick that up, but this first one is definitely worth picking up. Number 9 on this list is the Orange manga series by Ichigo Takano. I have the 2 volumes of the complete collection, but I believe that this was first published in 5 volumes. These 2 have all 5 in there. I think 1 through 3 are in here and 4 and 5 are in here. At the beginning of the story, our main character receives a letter that claims to be from her future self, telling her to watch over this new boy that's going to join their class that day. And as I've said in pretty much every video where I've talked about this story, it's just a really adorable, very heartwarming story of friendship among all of these different friends in this friend group. I gave this first volume 9.5 stars, and I gave the second volume 8 stars, so they average together to about 9, which is 4 out of 5, but overall, this series was just really awesome. I read the entire thing in one day. It was just so heartwarming, and it was just a really amazing and adorable story, and I absolutely loved it. Number 8 on my list is Lair of Dreams by Libba Bray. This is the sequel to The Diviners by Libba Bray, and I first read The Diviners back in 2014, but in 2016 I actually listened to both of these books on audiobook. This series takes place in the 1920s and is set in New York, and it follows a very large cast of characters, most of whom have these special abilities and are called diviners. I obviously can't get into the story of this too much since it is a sequel, but the first book was one of my favorite books of 2014. I gave it a full 5 out of 5 stars, or 9.5 out of 10. This one got 9 out of 10, so I liked it a little bit less, but honestly, the story just weaves together all of these plot lines really, really well, and all of the characters are very unique and distinct and very diverse, and they're just all so special, and I love this series. And also, I would definitely highly recommend the audiobooks. The first time I read The Diviners, I thought that the 1920s language was a little hard to get into, but the tone is set really, really well in the audiobook. So if you start The Diviners and you're a little iffy about it, read the audiobook or listen to the audiobook, because it's really, really outstanding. And January Lavoie, I think is her name, and she does a phenomenal job. So we're now moving into the books where I gave them a full 5 out of 5 stars, starting with books that got 9.5 out of 10. The first one being Carry On by Rainbow Rowell. So in Rainbow Rowell's book Fangirl, the main character Kath loves this series called the Simon Snow series, and she writes a fanfic called Carry On about the Simon Snow series. And although this is not the fanfic that Kath writes, it is set within that Simon Snow world. It's very similar to Harry Potter in the fact that Simon Snow is a wizard. He goes to a wizard school, and he is kind of the chosen one. And I've said several times that it took me quite a while to get into this, because for the first 150 pages, I felt like it was very, very much a copy of Harry Potter. But it hit a certain point and completely diverged from anything that reminded me of Harry Potter in the slightest, and it played with a lot of tropes really, really well, and I just fell completely in love with the story. I did a full 180. It was just really awesome. I think I read the majority of this book in one single sitting because I just couldn't put it down. I wanted to know what was going to happen. I fell completely in love with these characters and the story and this world, which was really, really cool, surprisingly, and I really enjoyed this book. Moving on to number 6 on the list, which is the last of the full series on this list, and that is the Death Note manga series by Tsugumi Oba. I'm not going to run through my ratings on all of these volumes, but just know that volume 6 was my favorite, followed closely by number 1, and I gave all of them, except for 6, 4 out of 5 stars. They were all kind of in the 8 to 9 range. I loved every volume in this series. So in this series, our main character Light discovers this notebook, and this notebook is called a Death Note. It was dropped by a god of death called a Shinigami, and if you write someone's name in this notebook, they die. Light decides to use this to his advantage and to write down the names of people who he thinks aren't fit to be in this world with the good people. So criminals, people who have done bad things, stuff like that. But when all of these criminals start kind of just dying randomly, the police start to think that there might be something fishy going on here, and they call in this special detective named Elle, who's very, very mysterious. And now a battle of wits between two geniuses, Light and Elle, has begun, and it is just a really, really intriguing and awesome series. Although I did give almost every single individual volume only 4 out of 5, I would say that they all combine to create what I would deem to be, if not a 10 out of 10 series, at least a 9.5 out of 10 series, full 5 out of 5 stars. It's just a very, very awesome series. The characters are really, really interesting and intriguing, and the overarching plots are really complex and intricate and just really, really smart. That's the one thing I will say about this series, is it's really, really smart and clever. I do have a full spoiler-free review of the Death Note series and its anime, so I will leave that up in the cards if you want to check that out. I love this series. It's outstanding. So now we're going to be breaking into the top 5 with the book in the 5th place slot, which is The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. I gave this 9.5 stars out of 10, which is 5 out of 5 on Goodreads. As you can see, this book is massive. It's a little bit over 1,000 pages long, and it's just really epic. That's all I can say. It's really epic. Admittedly, it took me a very long time to get into this book, but that's because the majority of the book is set up because this is the first book in a 10-book series, and all of the books are going to be about the same length as this huge giant book. That being said though, this series is very, very intriguing and very complex. I have yet to continue on to book 2, mostly because it's a very big time commitment, but this series is going really awesome places, and I can't wait to see what happens. Since this is the first book in a 10-book massive series, it's very hard to explain what it's about, but it's just a massive epic fantasy, and Brandon Sanderson is awesome, and I think that's kind of all you need to know. That being said, it does mostly follow 4 different characters who are going to play a key role in the series. I believe that a few more get added in the second book, but like I said, I haven't continued on, but this book is really awesome. Obviously, I love Brandon Sanderson so much, and I would recommend that you check it out. So moving on to number 4, we are now getting to the books that I gave a full 10 out of 10 stars. These are my top 4 of the year, the ones that completely blew me away. Coming in at number 4 is The Forgetting by Sharon Cameron, which I, like I said, gave 10 out of 10 stars, and I do have a full review of this, which I will link up in the cards. So this is a dystopian that takes place in a city where every 12 years this thing called the Forgetting happens. When the Forgetting happens, everyone loses all of their memories. They don't know who they are, they don't know where they are, they don't know anything. So to combat this, they carry around journals with them, and they basically record their entire life so that when the Forgetting happens, they can read about their life and find out who they are. However, our main character, Nadia, has never been affected by the Forgetting. The last time it came around, she retained all of her memories and watched as a chaos ensued as everyone else forgot theirs. But in the story, the Forgetting is about to happen again, and Nadia is trying to unravel some of the mysteries surrounding it. Overall, I just found this to be a completely intriguing and engrossing read. This was another one that I picked up late at night, and I just could not put it down. It was so interesting, and the world was really, really unique and very intriguing, and I really enjoyed the characters. This was just, like, overall really awesome. Coming in at number 3 on my list is The Chimes by Anna Smale. This book, very simply put, is beautiful. It's mainly a dystopian, kind of fantasy, and it takes place in a dystopian England. In this story, people have trouble retaining their memories, and a lot of communication is done through music. So for example, singing the way to get somewhere, or speaking in solfege syllables, stuff like that. And in the same way, Anna Smale has woven musical terminology into the prose of her novel. It's very heavy on literary fiction for a good chunk of the book. This was one of my earlier reads of the year, and I talked about it much more eloquently in my February wrap-up, so I'll go ahead and link that up in the cards. But this is just a very, very beautiful novel. It's beautifully written. The musical prose is just outstanding, and this was longlisted for the Man Booker in 2015, and I can completely understand why. The story is really wonderful. The prose, like I said, is really beautiful. I think the world is very, very interesting. Just this book is the total package. And on top of that, if it couldn't get any better, this cover is also beautiful. It's a total package. It's amazing. It's outstanding. I loved it. Coming in at number 2 on my list is The Mime Order by Samantha Shannon, which is the sequel to The Bone Season. The Bone Season was my second favorite book in 2014, so it's only fitting that this is my second favorite book in 2016. I have fallen completely in love with this series. It is so good. And I love it so much. So since this is a sequel, I can't talk about this one, but I will talk about The Bone Season. So The Bone Season is set in a dystopian England where a lot of people are clairvoyant, but clairvoyance is extremely, extremely illegal. Not just using your clairvoyant abilities, but actually being clairvoyant is enough to get you arrested. And Paige is one of the rarest forms of voyance, and she actually works in an underground voyant gang in London. That's about all I'm going to say as the premise, but trust me, there is so much more to even just the first book, but I don't want to spoil anything for you because this series is outstanding. I love the characters. I love the plot. I think it's so intriguing. I think that the clairvoyance is so intriguing. The world is so intriguing. I love this series. And the Mime Order, while I gave it 10 out of 10 stars, I liked it slightly less than the Bone Season, but both books are absolutely outstanding. So now we've made it to number 1, my favorite book that I read in 2016. If you've been following me all year, this one might be pretty obvious, but it's one that I just read and completely got engrossed in and fell in love with. And it's been the standout for most of the year, and I keep trying to see if I can beat it, but I just can't beat it. And it is Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. It is so good. Once again, for the second year in a row, a Brandon Sanderson book has gotten my first place slot, and I'm not mad at it. I love Brandon Sanderson. His books are so good. Once again, like with a few others, I do have a full video review up on my channel, and I will link that up in the cards. I don't think I've said this, but all of my reviews are spoiler-free, so go ahead and watch it, learn about Warbreaker, and fall in love with it like I did. There's so much stuff going on in this book that it would be really hard to explain all of it in one fell swoop, but essentially it takes place in a world where the magic system is called breath, and it uses color to do magic. This book follows several different characters. 2 of them are princesses, one of whom is forced to marry the God King, one of whom is trying to go rescue her sister. There's also a lesser god, and there's also another mysterious character that we follow throughout the story. It's just a lot of characters' stories woven together, which is one of my favorite things. The magic system is so interesting, and the world is really interesting as well. I love this book. I love Brandon Sanderson. It's just definitely, clearly, very obvious to me, the best book that I've read all year. As of right now, it is a standalone, but there is a second book in the works that will come out eventually, but from what I've seen, it's not a priority on Brandon Sanderson's writing list, which is very, very long because the dude writes 2 to 3 books a year. But as of right now, I'm very satisfied with this as a standalone, and I will be even more satisfied when I get a second book that I can devour, because this was fantastic. So those are the best books that I read in 2016. I feel like overall, I had a really good reading year in 2016. I feel like I read a lot of books that I really, really enjoyed, and I don't know, I just feel like 2016 was a pretty good reading year for me, for at least the first half of the year. The last few months were a little all over the place, but the first 7 to 9 months of the year were really, really great. That being said, I will also have a few other end of 2016 videos up around this time. I don't know which order they're going to be up in, but other than this video, I'm also going to have a least favorite books of 2016, which will be a list of 5 books. And I will also be wrapping up the challenges that I attempted in 2016 and introducing my 2017 reading challenges. And I'm going to be doing another book bucket list for 2017, which isn't necessarily a strict TBR that I'll follow in 2017, but just a list of books that I want to read. So lots of end of the year, beginning of the year stuff, but I'm excited about all of it. So that's going to be it for this favorite books of 2016 video. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know down in the comments what your favorite book was that you read in 2016. As always, I will leave links down in the description to my blog, Twitter, and Goodreads. Please add me as a friend on Goodreads. I would love to be friends with all of you. Like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!